A massive horned demon charges four desperate human captives across the barren wasteland, but the prisoners fight back together, wrenching free and hammering their hulking attacker from several sides, while the furious blonde fighter swings his cleaver, refusing to let any demon underestimate humanity, and his full power strike tears straight through the monster before it can recover. The brute crashes down in a smoky explosion as the surviving humans stare at their handiwork, inspiring the red-eyed prisoner, who realizes three coordinated men can kill three demons and escape. Though the blonde fighter wastes no time celebrating and rallies everyone to run with him, forcing the group through another violent clash as their improvised rebellion gathers momentum. The red-eyed young man watches the bold escape attempt with growing interest and cautious hope, until a larger demon confronts the humans, mocking the prisoners who believe themselves capable, backed by an entire squad of armed monsters ready to crush any remaining resistance. Their warning lands brutally, leaving fallen captives beneath the demon's feet as the survivors freeze, and the red-eyed prisoner remembers humanity's humiliating place within this merciless underground world. Demon hordes once erupted from Earth's depths, routed mankind everywhere, and dragged survivors into captivity, so the young man can only watch another failed rebellion disappear beneath the monster's control. The demon commander challenges the shaken prisoners, asking whether anyone else still intends to resist, but a shameless captive urges everyone to obey, praise their captors, and avoid the rebels' fate, prompting the frightened crowd to chant "Long live the demons" as their escort resumes. Watching the traitorous cheerleaders serve his masters, the red-eyed prisoner quietly predicts a nasty ending, and the seemingly powerless captive is finally introduced by his full name, Yi. Amid the terrified survivors, Yi suddenly reunites with Momo, a companion who feared everyone had died, and he gently calls her Peach while checking that the tearful girl is truly unharmed, pulling her close as he promises protection and insists they can both survive this nightmare, while Momo chooses to trust him despite the bodies and demons surrounding them. Yet his guarded expression reveals that survival will require something far riskier than reassurance. Yi secretly plans to cover Peach while she waits for the perfect chance to flee. But the frightened girl refuses to abandon him and begs that they escape together, so he orders her to hide until night if his plan works, then travel south alone, firmly promising that she will survive even as his expression warns the cost may be brutal. Momo clings to his hand, terrified that the scheme could fail and separate them forever, though he offers only one instruction in return: watch carefully and seize the right opportunity. Nearby, the purple-haired collaborator gathers two prisoners and decides their own move must happen now, only for Yi to launch first, smashing a surprise punch across the traitor's face and sending the stunned collaborator flying while his equally shocked partners scramble backward, before the furious man orders his companions to attack their unexpected challenger. So both prisoners charge together, convinced they can overwhelm one supposedly powerless captive. The demon commander intervenes with a monstrous club strike that instantly destroys their formation, leaving the gray-haired attacker screaming as his leg is crushed in the chaos. Our guy immediately plays innocent, claiming he discovered this group attempting an escape, and the enraged commander silences every protest by swinging his enormous club once again. While the demons focus on punishment, Yi silently signals that Peach's promised moment has arrived, allowing her to slip behind a fallen monster as the other prisoners unknowingly screen her movement. He keeps the commander distracted by loudly insisting his accusation against the conspirators was true, but the irritated brute rewards this supposed loyalty with a savage kick to the chest, launching the young man helplessly across the wasteland before he crashes onto his back. Though even through the pain, he celebrates because Peach successfully reached her hiding place, until another demon reports that someone vanished, sending the commander searching beside his fallen subordinate. Worse, a frightened captive immediately points toward the exact corpse concealing the runaway girl, leaving Yi to watch in horror as the commander closes in on her shelter. The hulking monster reaches the body, already certain that his missing prisoner is underneath, then yanks Peach from hiding while she screams and struggles against his crushing grip, while desperate cries for help tear through the crowd as the demon prepares to finish her, and Yi launches himself forward, knocking Peach away from the monster's snapping jaws, then catches the terrified girl midair and assures her that she is safe in his arms, before grabbing her hand and sprinting for freedom with every demon now alerted. Flying scouts close the sky while the furious commander strides directly into their escape route, bearing a mouthful of fangs as he prepares to tear both prisoners apart. Peach asks whether they are about to die, but her protector keeps scanning for an opening, even as his own mind echoes her earlier fear about what happens if everything fails. Because the commander has already raised his bloodied club for a lethal finishing blow. Believing death is unavoidable, Yi finally admits that he has always loved Peach, holding her tightly as she answers that they can remain together in the afterlife. And through her tears, Peach promises marriage there, turning their final embrace painfully sincere. While the commander's massive weapon plummets toward the pair after 4 long years of captivity, only for a second colossal strike to intercept the execution and cut through their hulking attacker, leaving the commander broken as an unseen woman mocks his mindless violence, while the surviving prisoners stare upward, unsure whether this terrifying intervention means rescue or something worse, and the airborne scouts descend around the battlefield to await their superior's orders, leaving both escapees frozen before whoever just demolished their seemingly unstoppable jailer, the horned magic general Mengqier, floating above them with a dangerously playful smile, whose overwhelming arrival reduces the lesser demons to obedient silence beneath a mountain of defeated bodies, before she points directly at the red-eyed captive and commands him to accompany her for breeding. Everyone reels as Mengqier casually repeats that she intends to use him for demon offspring, but Yi furiously rejects the offer, condemning demons for slaughtering, burning, and enslaving humanity. A gigantic shadowy hand erupts before he can finish, closing around his head without warning, and the startled general lifts him effortlessly, while his resistance proves completely useless. Suspended by his face, our guy desperately grips her wrist but cannot loosen a single finger, until Peach rushes forward, grabs Mengqier's arm, and demands that she release him. The general's pleasant mask twists into pure nightmare as she orders the interfering girl to disappear, blasting Peach across the ground while carrying her chosen captive away through the air. Mengqier hurls Yi back down, ordering her servants to separate everyone and preserve him, while a demon drags Peach away, despite his desperate promise that he will rescue her. The remaining captives are driven onward past gigantic monsters, with hesitation earning immediate threats, as their powerful new overseer dismisses every member of the frightened group as weak, declaring that enslavement by heaven's stronger demons is simply the destiny awaiting powerless humanity. Before the prisoners enter a cavern shaped like the open jaws of some colossal beast, where demons funnel the exhausted people toward several passages while Yi studies the route, and armed guards force everyone into the central aisle without explaining what waits elsewhere, prompting one bald captive to demand why the middle differs from either side, then refuses to enter until the irritated guard gives him an actual explanation. The demon lunges to punish his insolence, swinging a huge blade at the defiant prisoner, but the surprisingly agile man counters midair and slams a powerful kick into his attacker, sending the stunned guard skidding backward as every captive watches the impossible upset, then offering to perform any labor so long as the demons never turn them into food. That revelation triggers panic as prisoners realize the wrong passage could lead directly onto a menu, until a calm female voice orders the noisy bald fighter to stop causing trouble, revealing a horned overseer who promises those entering her middle passage will not be eaten. The bald man instantly understands the offer, his desperate resistance collapsing into obedient relief, while the overseer's glowing eyes reinforce a simple command: obey and join the line. So he eagerly organizes everyone into an orderly column and marches them toward the central aisle. Yi understands the middle group avoids becoming food but immediately questions the other two routes, noticing few captives enter the left while elderly and sick prisoners are herded right, and when a guard sends Peach there, the horrifying sorting system finally becomes clear. Those right-hand prisoners are food, sending our guy into a furious panic for Peach's safety, so he demands permission to join her, openly challenging the demon's carefully organized selection, until a towering white-haired guard refuses and hurls the disobedient captive away with ease, sending him tumbling across the cavern just as Leah approaches the disturbance and calmly questions the brute, apparently irritated that he disrupted her intake process. Violet power flares around her eye as the amused demon prepares to enforce her authority, while the guard explains that another lord personally selected this human for a special purpose, but she claims equal selection rights and ensures him to tell that superior she is taking Yi, leaving the towering brute hesitant and clearly unwilling to challenge this smiling demon. Addressing her as Leah, he attempts one objection and is instantly knocked backward for speaking out, while Yi exploits the opening and drives a kick into the reeling guard's body. Leah coolly mocks the demon for daring to answer her with "but," enjoying his humiliation, then turns toward the startled prisoner and simply orders him to accompany her. Elsewhere in the cavern, another demon launches a blue-haired captive violently across the ground, but the red-eyed young man dives in, catching the smaller prisoner before the impact, and both skid through the dust together while their attacker stares after them, completely confused about the stranger who just risked himself to interrupt the punishment. Leah stops the guard from retaliating, preserving Yi as leverage against the lord who claimed him, while he immediately checks whether the blue-haired captives survived their rough landing afterward, and the rescue exposes how completely hellish life inside this cavern has become. Countless humans labor beneath enormous skeletal structures while armed demons patrol every unfinished section, and Leah orders the newcomers to repair 1,000 demon residences within a single week. Her cheerful promise to kill everyone if they fail leaves the entire workforce stunned, with the blue-haired captive protesting that such an impossible quota is nothing but torture. So when he says they might as well kill him now, a demon eagerly attacks, but Leah pulls Yi away, explaining that her valuable bargaining chip cannot work beside them. She leads him deeper through the massive construction zone, leaving the suffering workers far below, until the wary prisoner finally asks why she separated him from everyone else, and more urgently demands to know what happens to people sent through the rite passage, though Leah turns away and complains that his relentless questions are becoming exhausting. She reveals that he is merely leverage in a private bargain, then prepares to explain her terms, while warning that one more interruption will earn him an immediate death sentence. Silent but observant, Yi recognizes that even prisoners spared from becoming food endure brutal oppression, and those selected as meals cannot survive long, making Peach's rescue terrifyingly urgent. Yet the 1,000 residences are still unfinished, proving this cavern is an expanding demon settlement designed to channel more evil energy toward the surface and create the perfect escape opportunity. As our guy suddenly realizes he may have found a way to exploit the construction crisis, Yi boldly claims he can help Leah complete all 1,000 residences before the deadline, earning one skeptical pause from a demon who could erase him for wasting her time. She grants exactly 1 minute, forcing the nervous prisoner to pitch his plan immediately, beginning with fear, whose constant stress weakens bodies, disrupts hearts, and damages human minds, leaving terrified laborers physically incapable of maintaining the efficiency Leah actually needs at all. As he identifies demon violence and the 7-day death threat as the exact causes of failure, but Leah insists she only wanted faster workers and never expected the impossible quota completed. Yi proposes replacing reactive labor under death threats with proactive effort driven by rewards, specifically freedom, though Leah instantly asks whether he seriously expects her to release humans, forcing him to tread carefully because this demon may genuinely slaughter everyone if offended. He argues that even false hope will motivate prisoners to work voluntarily and far harder, promising visible improvement within 2 days if she allows him to test the policy. After considering the gamble, Leah summons a pale servant called Shadow Swipe to her chamber, and the creature arrives almost instantly, moving through the cavern as a purple streak, before kneeling at her feet and awaiting instructions with disciplined attention in silence, where Leah orders Shadow Swipe to explain current progress and help implement the new policy. So the servant accepts, then leads Yi away to begin the 2-day experiment. While outside the chamber, Mengxier quietly appears after the pair have already departed, dismissing Leah's supposed leverage and assuming the red-eyed human is merely bluffing for survival, while workers elsewhere react in confusion when demons demand a collection despite unfinished construction. Facing the workforce, Yi publicly introduces himself as Ichia before announcing major changes, canceling the collective quota, and assigning individual portions whose completion supposedly earns freedom above ground, which makes the exhausted captives erupt with hope that one finished assignment could truly release them, and praise Ichishir for negotiating with Leah when every earlier demand brought only punishment, while he also declares that demons can no longer abuse people completing their assigned work, privately hoping this imperfect bargain can at least stop prisoners from suffering for nothing, although the burden of offering false freedom demands a more practical long-term solution, until the purple-haired collaborator interrupts and warns everyone against trusting their new spokesman, then accuses Ichia of sacrificing his brother during the escape and branding him a demon collaborator, leaving the red-eyed prisoner shaken when that buried consequence returns before the entire crowd, until a furious demon moves to crush the accuser. But Ie invokes his agreement with Leah, ordering every guard to stop threatening humans and listen to him exactly as she commanded. The collaborator follows him anyway, sneering that their supposed savior has become another demon lapdog, and screams the accusation directly into his face, demanding that Ichia explain his hypocrisy. Ie counters that flattering demons prevented another massacre, asking who truly behaved like their servant, but the furious man asks whether he plans to kill everyone just as he killed his brother. Even Shadow Swipe hesitates nearby, bound by Leah's orders despite privately despising the human prisoners, while the accusation forces their spokesman to confront what his clever survival tactics actually cost. He admits inwardly that the man he killed was merely convenient collateral sacrifice to save Peach, and finally accepts that his accuser is right, leaving him crushed beneath the guilt. Through tears, he apologizes for killing the accuser's brother and admits the death was entirely his fault. But the grieving man mocks his apology and demands who can ever repay the stolen life, before the blue-haired boy steps between them, insisting brother Ichia saved him and deserves belief. With no safer choice remaining, the other prisoners reluctantly decide to trust their unlikely spokesman. Asked whether everyone will die after 7 days, he repeats that finishing work earns release, and the desperate captives seize that tiny promise, declaring they want to believe and survive. Ichia postpones settling the dead brother's debt, because saving the living must come first, while the furious accuser can only curse and turn away from their renewed determination. A horned overseer calls everyone forward, distributing individual assignments across the cavern's construction zone, and workers immediately haul lumber through tunnels, now racing against quotas that finally feel achievable. When the blue-haired boy says his rescuer need not help, Ichia grabs a tool anyway, learning that the sickly youth endured bullying before and after enslavement, with nobody else defending him. He answers that the boy helped him too, then notices something wrong with their assigned section, because villagers casually stole the youth's finished work while the nearby demon ignored everything, and a massive green guard watches the vulnerable prisoner with clenched fists and predatory intent. Yet the boy thanks Ichiya for both assistance and food, determined to finish and return above ground. Their hopeful conversation breaks when a terrified scream tears across the active construction grounds, revealing the green guard tormenting a fallen worker who desperately begs the demon lord's forgiveness. So Ichiya confronts the brute and invokes Leah's deal, demanding that the assault stop. The assigned horned supervisor rushes between them, furiously questioning the green guard's actions. The brute claims the careless human struck him, while his terrified victim insists he merely tripped. But Lord Shadeslayer cites Leah's orders, making protection and rapid construction more important than punishment. As Ichiya notices the demon's spilled acid eating into the ground beside a discarded hoe, then tests the corrosive slime himself, discovering it can make their brutal labor considerably easier. He asks Shadeslayer to make the green demon produce more of this useful solution, calculating that a steady acid supply could accelerate construction far beyond ordinary human strength, and although the brute protests, Shadeslayer threatens to report his refusal directly to Leah, prompting him to complain that surrendering so much acid might actually kill him. Nevertheless, the bubbling green secretion fills the air with a strangely pleasant scent until its exhausted producer collapses over the basin and swears he has nothing left, whereupon two stronger demons grab him from behind before he can escape his new duty, squeezing the struggling brute relentlessly until every remaining drop is forced from his body, and sending a thick stream of acid splashing into an enormous hollow skull basin. Shadeslayer orders the pumping to continue while humans line up for their allotted portions, and workers carry glowing bowls away, spreading the corrosive aid throughout the construction grounds, thrilled that this humiliating demon resource could bring their promised return home much sooner. While Ichiya realizes Leah's urgency convinced three demons to improve human efficiency despite their contempt, though even acid and renewed enthusiasm may finish only 200 houses, leaving her promise uncertain. Elsewhere, pale tentacles coil around a hut as an elegant horned demon surveys another troubling birth, warning that if new demons keep appearing at this rate, their entire world will eventually collapse. Monkir pushes Leah from her thoughts and resolves to reclaim the human chosen for her, then approaches a gray-skinned attendant who formally addresses her as Lord Meng Chi-yong, though he warns that inferior humans corrupt demon minds and urges her to keep away. She challenges him to name anyone else capable of completing her mysterious assignment, calls the attendant Carbon, and declares him too poorly humanized to offer meaningful advice, forcing the chastened demon to lower his objections and obediently acknowledge his lord. Back at the settlement, Shadeslayer suddenly finds Ichiya and announces Leah is summoning him, where she praises his rising motivation and efficiency, planning to copy the system elsewhere. While he estimates individual quotas could complete the entire project within roughly half a month, until Leah asks exactly what reward he promised the workers and hears they expect release, an answer that makes the amused demon ruler laugh openly at his impossible bargain. She recognizes his concern for prisoners sent into the food bank and asks his price, so he identifies Peach and requests protection, receiving Leah's effortless promise to arrange it, before she compares that assurance to his own empty promise of freedom after construction. The cruel parallel strikes him instantly, exposing how little either promise truly guarantees, and although he inwardly denies the implication, his confidence begins collapsing beneath the truth until another fear hits. Revealing Peach's existence may have placed her directly in Leah's sights, while Leah merely says completed workers might be kept alive, then casually dismisses him, leaving the rattled prisoner outside her chamber clutching his head and desperately seeking another solution, when an unseen demon suddenly calls out to the human and stops him cold. The voice belongs to Mengqier, who watches from above and demands to know his destination, then descends with a blunt command that he accompany her and help breed demon offspring. But the cornered prisoner claims he found a solution and will cooperate for one favor, asking her to perform a single task first, which the eager demon readily accepts. She leads him into a secluded cavern where no other demons can interrupt them, and he addresses her as Mengji before asking her to rescue Peach from the food area, a request she dismisses as trivial, agreeing because the target is merely human. Since Leah now knows about Peach, he realizes this dangerous demon is his remaining leverage, so, after securing her agreement, he cautiously asks what Mengji expects in return, learning she wants instruction in human reproduction and his cooperation producing more demon babies, though he insists on understanding her purpose and demands she fulfill her promise first, while Mengji rejects all conditions, promising help only after their reproduction succeeds as demanded. Her human-like body lacks human modesty, but he decides deception can transform danger into rescue, beginning by claiming human reproduction cannot produce successful results through physical contact alone, and insisting genuine love comes first, offering Peach and himself as the necessary demonstration, but the impatient demon refuses delays and orders him to teach her love directly. The prospect of forming a romantic relationship with Mengje leaves him momentarily stunned, until he realizes winning her affection could place a mighty demon entirely under his influence, giving him enough power to rescue Peach from the food bank despite Leah's schemes, and perhaps liberate every remaining laborer after their impossible construction assignment is finally completed. Convinced this supposed lesson ultimately benefits him, Ichiya asks Mengji to display several different emotions, and the confident demon agrees without hesitation, ready to begin begin his unusual instruction, but her versions of confusion, fear, boredom, and envy resemble shallow poses rather than feelings, until genuine anger erupts when she finally demands to know why this exercise matters. He concludes demon society never allowed its people to develop the rich emotions humans understand, then wonders whether simpler physical communication could make a demon fall for a human, and silently apologizing to Peach, he suddenly takes Mungji's face and kisses her. Her orange eyes widen in stunned surprise as the unfamiliar contact freezes her completely, while the nervous teacher retreats behind his sleeve and cautiously asks whether anything changed, but she thinks he attacked her until he explains that human lovers touch their lips, only for Mungji to report that the kiss made her feel absolutely nothing. She decides he chose the wrong contact point and casually invites him to try elsewhere, leaving the increasingly alarmed prisoner to repeat that invitation and question what she means, as Mungji indicates several places across her body and grants permission to test them all. So, he awkwardly touches her horns, hair, waist, and legs while searching for any response. Every experiment deepens his guilt toward Peach, even knowing the woman before him is demonic, because Mungjia's human-like appearance makes exploiting her body far harder than his plan assumed. Yet she impatiently presses closer and orders her hesitant teacher to hurry with the lesson, prompting him to pull away, apologize, and admit his anxiety has overwhelmed him before insisting love needs mutual emotional connection, because physical contact alone is merely a transaction. Mungjie claims she can verify his explanation and orders him to inspire love immediately, but Ichia argues real affection develops gradually and rushing the process only guarantees failure, persuading the impatient demon to accept his reasoning and demand their next lesson. After a tense moment searching for some harmless delay, he finally finds an answer and announces that their courtship must begin with each person sending the other a gift, explaining this human custom builds familiarity, though Mungji only recalls receiving presents from someone named Mark, so he emphasizes that one-sided offerings mean nothing and insists they exchange gifts mutually, framing the custom as a contest that reveals preferences and accelerates their supposed journey toward love, which immediately ignites Mungji's competitive spirit because she has never lost any game. She launches away before he can finish explaining, forcing him to grab desperately after her, then accelerates through the cavern while her frantic teacher chases and protests, "This is no contest," only for the speeding demon to knock him violently across the rocky ground. Still trying to control the scheme, he says they must first learn each other's favorite things, while Mingjia complains that human customs are troublesome, but boasts she can accomplish anything, prompting him to mention a desire involving double ponytails as she listens for guidance. Yet she instantly claims understanding and flies off again before he finishes the thought. Left behind, he hopes that clue will make her retrieve Peach and plans a distinctive counter-gift. While far inside the food area, his endangered companion suddenly returns to his thoughts, as a terrified blue-eyed captive throws out her hand and begs someone not to proceed, only to flee from a gigantic tentacled predator whose circular mouth bristles with countless teeth. The captive offers labor, obedience, and anything else if the creature will spare her life, but blood erupts as the ravenous monster tears into its helpless human prey. It chews a massive slab of flesh and angrily orders the screaming prisoners silent, while demon handlers carry butchered meat toward the beast across its grotesque feeding platform, beneath hanging human skeletons that expose the food area as an organized slaughterhouse, although Peach remains alive nearby, standing quietly among the captives awaiting their fate. A mysterious voice calls her name, drawing her attention toward a barred bone enclosure, where a dark figure waits behind the rib-like cage and watches her approach, leaving Peach wide-eyed as she begins at last to recognize whoever has summoned her, while Mengji returns to Ichia's cavern and announces that her contest entry is ready, prompting him to begin crafting his own surprise from an enormous discarded demon skull, as he cuts and paints theatrically while reciting an absurdly romantic improvised poem, spinning his tools around the horned skull and treating the grisly material like artwork, then finishing with wild verses comparing their connecting passion to corrosive sulfuric acid. Mengjie stares at the performance in baffled fascination, unable to understand his bizarre technique, before he proudly presents the result and asks what she thinks of his handiwork, but she interrupts the evaluation, insisting he first look at the gift she prepared. Her offering is a gigantic blue demon servant supposedly suitable even for an adult human, ordered to call Ichi a lord and belong entirely to him, which makes Mengjie proclaim victory, though his stunned response immediately leaves the competitive demon wondering what could possibly be wrong. When Mungji darkens with rage over his reaction, he quickly insists her gift made him ecstatic, then flatters her extraordinary talent until the competitive demon rolls away laughing with satisfaction, while privately recognizing that her growing cooperation gives him a genuine chance to save Peach. Asked what lovers do next, he proposes eating, walking, and playing together like an ordinary couple, which sends Mungji charging toward their first shared meal before he can reconsider, as the gigantic servant eagerly follows his new lord despite Ichia's horrified objection, and their romantic dinner reveals itself as a steaming cauldron of pink flesh and mushrooms. He lifts one roasted chunk toward his mouth, visibly struggling against its nauseating appearance, then asks whether it is human flesh, but Mingji tells him to eat without fear, arguing humans are emergency reserves no demon would choose while better food remains, before cheerfully adding a swollen, wriggling larva as another delicacy for her human partner, making the sickened prisoner spray his mouthful and cry desperately for his new servant. Meanwhile, Shadow Swipe visits Peach's bone cage, where Rage says only Lord Big Mouth can release her, so the envoy claims he only wants an inspection and assures Rage he will remember him, then vanishes after telling Peach he hopes she survives until his next visit, leaving the vulnerable woman staring after his fading silhouette in profound, uneasy confusion, because certain death was terrifying, but this unknown plan surrounding her feels even worse, and tears finally spill as she quietly calls for Ichia across the demon settlement. Back at dinner, the revolted human collapses and vomits beside Mungji's hulking gift, but she equates refusing food with rejecting their relationship and furiously orders him to eat. With no safe refusal available, Ichia forces down more chunks while fighting another wave of nausea, and his delighted companion laughs loudly, commanding him to keep eating from the awful cauldron. When his abused stomach finally rebels, he announces an urgent need to find a toilet, confusing Mingji because demons retain food as energy while weak humans must excrete waste, so the desperate captive asks where any bathrooms exist despite her mocking explanation, only to learn demons build none and he must locate a private place himself. He flees outside, refusing to let the obedient blue servant accompany this humiliating emergency, and finally finds relief among secluded rocks, briefly escaping the disastrous romantic date before cautiously emerging from his hiding place and sensing that something has changed, because the gigantic servant lies dead nearby with a smoking wound burned through his chest. Carbon stands over the corpse and asks whether this human is truly Mungji's favorite, then silences Ichia before he can answer, determined to deliver his own command, ordering him to reject whatever Mungji requests because human presence supposedly pollutes her, while insisting a lowly mortal cannot remain beside the noble demon he worships, revealing jealous devotion beneath Carbon's contempt as he idealizes his beloved Lord Meng. He points toward the murdered servant and promises identical punishment if Ichia refuses, but the prisoner recognizes Mungji's frequent gift-giver and immediately spots Carbon's emotional weakness, outwardly accepting the threat with meek obedience while already preparing a stronger counterplay, until Carbon starts leaving and orders the human to remember every threatening warning, whereupon Ichia offers secrecy about both the murder and meeting, placing the jealous demon in his debt. Carbon pauses at this unexpected discretion, then turns back wearing a newly satisfied smile, and seals their dangerous arrangement by taking the human's offered hand in his, although demonic fire immediately surges through the handshake and scorches Ichia's vulnerable skin, forcing him to tear himself free while Carbon calmly displays the threat behind their bargain, before calling him a good man and walking away alone with smug approval. The prisoner studies his smoking palm, where a blackened burn still glows beneath the soot, then clenches that injured hand and vows Carbon will not make him surrender, returning to Mungji, who immediately asks where the gigantic servant she provided disappeared. He hides the murder by claiming he sent the demon back to his previous duties, which irritates her deeply because a gift dared abandon the human she chose, but he redirects that anger toward continuing their human-style date, and she enthusiastically agrees, shoving him outside at full speed while announcing that they will take a romantic walk. Their route carries them through a busy demon district filled with strange wandering creatures, whose residents openly stare at the remarkable human strolling beside a powerful horned lord, until one tall demon reaches toward Ichia, apparently curious about the rare captive, and Mengji instantly decapitates him with one effortless strike before casually continuing onward. She also swats away another creature, then guides her shaken companion past enormous weapon displays, casually handing him a towering spear so heavy he can barely keep it upright, before they stop beside a spiked arena where two muscular demons confront each other, and the brutal exhibition begins with punches powerful enough to stagger both monstrous fighters. Mengji watches the violence with sparkling delight, cheering each heavy blow beside her human companion, then smiles in quiet satisfaction, clearly more comfortable with combat than any romantic custom, while a hidden figure observes their apparent closeness from beneath the surrounding spectators, revealed as Carbon, whose glowing chest and furious expression betray increasingly dangerous jealousy. Unaware of the spy, Ichia asks whether their date has finally made Mungji feel love, but she answers without hesitation that absolutely nothing inside her has changed at all. She immediately proposes another game Gam once practiced with her magic guard named Huan, introducing a squat, strange little orange-bellied fire creature waiting deeper within the cavern, which she grabs casually while explaining their dangerous playground lies inside the fire cave, where Huan repeatedly travels between openings and creates intersecting lanes of blazing energy, then launches fireballs that participants must dodge continuously until the creature grows tired. The human hesitates at the tunnel entrance, already questioning this lethal definition of entertainment, before countless fiery beams crisscross the cavern and leave almost no safe space, Yet saving Peach and the workers demands winning Mungji's heart, so he enters willingly. He leaps through the scorching maze, grimacing as each narrow escape tests his reflexes, then ducks beneath another beam and discovers his body gradually adapting to the speed, surprising Mungji as confidence replaces panic, and the deadly game begins feeling manageable, until Huan abandons fireballs and unexpectedly slams its burning body straight into his face, sending him crashing across the stone floor while another blazing shot narrowly passes overhead. And as he sits dazed among circling creatures, a massive fireball suddenly rockets toward him. Ichiya's eyes sharpen on the incoming blast as the game suddenly becomes genuinely lethal, while Mingji races through the barrage and warns her distracted partner to pay attention, leaving him amazed by the effortless speed with which she avoids every flaming projectile, and showing how completely demon instincts outclass even a rapidly adapting human body. He regains his footing beside her as blazing lines continue hammering the cavern floor, then realizes far too many fireworms are emerging and producing an abnormal roar, before spotting a suspicious silhouette hidden deep within a distant tunnel behind Meng Ji, and identifying the intruder's lingering energy as unmistakable burning traces left by carbon. Meng Ji keeps calling the ordeal normal demon training while he dodges the sabotage, even praising his reactions as remarkably capable for someone born weak and human, so the calculating captive jokingly credits his survival to the mighty power of love, though she rejects that nonsense, declares herself emotionless, and lets Huan strike him again. Watching from concealment, Carbon curses the human, whose influence keeps surviving every trap, while Ichiya catches the furious Huan despite its repeated threats to kill him, hoping close inspection will reveal enough foreign residue to directly expose Carbon's interference, until the exhausting swarm finally stops firing and the glowing beams fade across the cave, allowing Mungji to announce that their brutal training game has finally officially ended. She admits her human performed far better than expected and compliments his quick nervous reactions, which he accepts with swollen bumps covering his battered face and exaggerated cheer, before asking whether she truly felt nothing during the kiss he gave her earlier. Hidden nearby, Carbon hears the request for another kiss and twists with furious disbelief, finally deciding he cannot tolerate their growing intimacy and must attack the human directly. So he crushes another fire creature into the cavern wall to weaponize its blazing energy, accepting that eliminating his rival matters more than keeping his own sabotage concealed. Carbon concentrates the stolen fire into one hand and launches a lethal beam toward them, while Mengji hears the unfamiliar attack and turns, searching for its hidden source, as a concentrated red projectile slices across the cavern before either can properly react. But Ichiya throws Mengji aside and takes the ambush himself, crashing hard against stone. She immediately kneels beside the fallen human and anxiously demands to know whether he survived, while he lies face down, weakly assuring Mengji that the impact did not seriously injure him, then blames an angry firebug supposedly irritated by the scent of their romantic activities, confusing her because she still insists that none of these experiences produced emotion, until she privately realizes her urgent concern for this human contradicts that certainty. Mengji studies the scorched creature in silence, troubled by the feeling she cannot name, but when Ichiya presses again, she refuses to admit that anything changed inside her, staring away and denying every emotion with an answer that sounds increasingly uncertain. He proposes continuing the lessons for several more days, then asks why she seems distracted, whereupon Mengji orders him closer and turns as though testing some private conclusion, bringing their faces nearly together while the startled captive braces for another kiss, only to step away and declare that their strange courtship will resume tomorrow. Night settles over the crude shelter where Ichiya finally has time to think, and he realizes demons misunderstand human emotions despite carrying remarkably similar feelings within themselves, giving him real hope that Mengji can eventually fall in love with him. So tomorrow he will approach her again and somehow rescue Peach before anything else happens. Elsewhere, Mengji punishes Carbon's interference by assigning him to work among the human laborers. She coldly reminds her jealous servant that he has no authority to obstruct her mission, forcing Carbon to swallow his anger, bow his head, and obediently accept the humiliating order, while Mengji privately resents how he ruined the one peaceful moment she enjoyed today. Yet her lingering silence reveals that the encounter affected her more deeply than expected. Blushing alone, she clutches herself and stubbornly insists that she still feels absolutely nothing, as three stronger prisoners tell a blue-haired child they will finish together before helping him, with their red-haired leader patronizingly patting the wary boy and ordering him to hurry, until Ichiya storms into the worksite and bluntly tells the smug bully to leave. His boot slams directly into the red-haired prisoner's face before anyone can react, dropping the larger man flat while the surrounding workers recoil from Ichiya's sudden force, and an outraged companion points at the attacker, shouting as though demanding immediate revenge, only for Mengji to descend behind him and effortlessly carry the screaming troublemaker away. That morning, Ichiya reaches her chamber while a muscular horned guard opens its bone gate, where the smiling magic general welcomes her human and announces their lessons will continue today, then rejects his formal title and commands him to address her simply as Mengji. Ichiya immediately asks her to rescue Peach from the food area before resuming their lessons, and Mengji agrees, provided he concentrates completely on teaching her once Peach is safe, leaning close as she demands that he finally make her fall in love like a human. Back at the worksite, the blue-haired child Koike happily welcomes Ichiya's unexpected return, but Koike's red-haired brother grabs him and demands the companion Mengji abducted be returned, leaving Ichiya scratching his head because he genuinely has no idea where that man went, before the vengeful green guard charges, forcing Ichiya to shove the red-haired prisoner aside. Both humans tumble clear as the enormous fist tears through the space they occupied, and terrified Koki cries out to his brother while the attacker prepares another assault, roaring that Ichiya dared return and promising to crush every organ inside his body, until a massive horn restrains the raging creature and an unseen authority orders him calm, whereupon the green demon's body convulses as swollen muscles multiply grotesquely across his frame. Instead of suffering, he revels in the transformation and celebrates his newly restored strength, declaring his old life returned while challenging anyone nearby to test his monstrous body, as the armored horned experimenter calmly asks how his altered subject currently feels, and nearby demons welcome Lord Wistenka as the armored experimenter confirms his subject's body changed. The transformation came from an injected substance called disfigurement, producing results better than before, so the delighted green subject thanks Lord Wistenka and eagerly departs to enjoy himself, while the armored demon turns toward the prisoners and asks which one is Yi Ye, prompting a bound purple-haired captive to identify Ichiya with an unsettlingly eager grin. Recognizing that Wistenka is exceptionally dangerous, Ichiya suppresses his fear and calmly asks what he wants, while the red-haired prisoner steps between them, incredulous that the demon would single Ichiya out. But Wistenka recognizes Mengji's companion and Lea's innovative human advisor, then orders his immediate capture. A hulking servant hands Lord Wistenka a living restraint called a binding worm, as Ichiya realizes his captor ranks beside Lia and Big Mouth among demon recruitment authorities, and the thick creature coils around his wrist despite protests that Mengji requires his assistance, before Wistenka's red-eyed brute kicks the bound prisoner down and silences every attempted objection. Koike reaches toward the fallen Ichiya and desperately cries for his brother to intervene. But Wistenka notices the child and mentions returning to Big Mouth, while Ichiya struggles against the worm and begs them to release the innocent teenager, earning a brutal chokehold from the servant, who dismisses his desperate plea with contempt as another binding worm wraps Koike's arms and the frightened child is dragged along. His red-haired brother can only sit trembling beside the rocks, powerless to stop them, while Wistenka marches away with Ichiya, Koike, and several other restrained human captives, and the purple-haired betrayer finally introduces himself to the wary Ichiya as Kambede, prompting the captive hero to ask their destination and confront him about the man he killed. Kambede reveals that dead captive was his younger brother, a man named Kam Echo, then continues following Wistenka through the cavern as Koike trails behind the bound procession, before warning Ichiya not to wait for whatever punishment their captors have planned, and smiling viciously as he demands repayment for his brother's death right now. Peach remembers childhood beneath a bright surface sky when Yiya comforted her tears, and she anxiously asked whether the bruised boy had survived whatever danger confronted them, but he smiled through his injuries and assured her that he chased every threat away, leaving young Peach deeply grateful, relieved, and quietly moved by his fearless protection. The memory ends as Yi begins offering her an unseen gift beneath the trees, returning Peach to reality behind the enormous bone bars of her underground cage, where 3 days have passed and uncertainty about Yi weighs painfully on her, until the sharply dressed blue demon guard Rage finally returns and announces his presence. Mengji arrives behind him with a completely wrapped human prisoner and demands he move faster, then immediately asks exactly where Big Mouth has gone before discussing Peach's release, while Rage politely welcomes the powerful visitor after their long separation and begins explaining that Big Mouth departed the area with several demons, leaving his subordinate in charge. Mengji offers her bundled captive as a replacement and orders Rage to surrender Peach, but the guard apologizes because Big Mouth enforces every exchange rule with absolute seriousness, requiring a formal report and approval before anyone assigned as food can be replaced. Even when Mengji proposes a secret trade, since discovery would leave Rage personally condemned, their argument reaches Peach, who peers through the bone cage and addresses the Demon Lord, then asks whether Mengji has returned because she was searching for her again. So Mengji offers to speak privately while Rage nervously requests silence about his hesitation, and Peach respectfully greets her visitor as Lord Mengji from behind the dividing bars. Mengji plainly promises to remove the human from this cage and return her to Yi, making Peach urgently ask whether he personally requested that the Demon Lord rescue her, before explaining that she and Yi are lovers when Mengji questions their relationship. The horned woman repeats the unfamiliar word, then declares she will become his lover too, confusing Peach, who asks how many many simultaneous lovers humans are actually allowed to have, and firmly answers her own question by insisting that love must remain one for one, but Mungji orders her to surrender because she now considers herself Yi Yi's only lover. Peach explodes in disbelief, rejects the claim, and demands to see Yi Yi herself, prompting Mungji to ask whether the captive truly refuses to abandon her competing affection, before coldly threatening that Peach will never see Yi Yi again if she persists, as her shadowy fist lashes toward the cage with enough force to produce a violent burst. Rage catches Mungji's arm before the blow lands and cautiously tries explaining the situation, but she impatiently asks whether any rule actually prevents her from killing Peach, forcing him to remind the furious general that every assigned captive remains officially recorded. While Mengji's darkened hand trembles inside the guard's grip as her frustration intensifies. She turns an ominous stare on Rage and asks whether he is completely certain, yet he insists the household rules are strict and magical guards cannot act without permission. So Mengji withdraws her enormous fist, visibly unconvinced by the frightened subordinate's explanation, then orders him to advance Peach's serial number and feed her to the demons sooner, which Rage reluctantly agrees to attempt, provided senior authorities do not interfere with Big Mouth. Mengji stalks away furious while the bundled replacement prisoner wriggles helplessly across the cavern floor, then vents her rage by kicking him aside and cursing Big Mouth's obstructive rules, before flying from the food chamber and leaving both Rage and her bruised captive behind. Watching her leave, Rage realizes she cares about a human for the first time, while elsewhere, glowing fungal structures surround the hidden cavern laboratory where Westenka brings his prisoners, and a hulking guard seals the fleshy entrance, allowing nobody inside without explicit assurance as Ichiya and the other captives hang spread against a wall beneath living restraints. He watches Westenka's preparations with growing alarm, unable to identify the coming experiment, until the demon raises a freshly removed golden heart that somehow continues beating, then asks his stitched assistant Heap whether anyone has touched this valuable organ, and Heap cheerfully denies it while standing beside the restrained Ichiya with unsettling familiarity. The scar-covered assistant assures Lord Westenka he would never move such an irreplaceable heart, praising the organ as perfect while his master prepares it for an unknown procedure. As Kombede points Heap out to Ichiya and calls him the genuine demon hound, while Heap promises something extremely interesting after Ichiya demands to know their purpose. Desperate, Ichiya claims he is essential to completing Mengji's critically important reproductive mission, and Westenka pauses beside the heart, asking whether that boast is actually true, so the prisoner explains their lessons in human love and asks whether Mengji authorized this. But Westenka mocks his hopes and asks what consequences await when his plan eventually fails, revealing that humans and demons cannot reproduce successfully, precisely why special intervention is required. Westenka ignores further objections and orders Heap to begin their promised procedure immediately, instructing his assistant to strip Ichiya first while Heap gleefully approaches the restrained captive. But pulling away the feathered coat gives the prisoner enough freedom to prepare resistance, and Ichiya suddenly tears loose from the living restraint, recognizing his first real opportunity. Heap watches with delighted curiosity as the escaped human snatches a knife from nearby, seizes the irreplaceable golden heart, and presses the blade against its pulsing surface, threatening to stab the organ unless every demon freezes and obeys his instructions, while Heap recklessly encourages the desperate prisoner to test whether he truly has courage. Westenka silences his assistant and asks what Ichiya wants before the heart is damaged, so he demands freedom for every captured human, receiving an unexpectedly casual agreement, though Westenka asks whether freedom means leaving only the laboratory or reaching the surface, forcing Ichiya to realize that escaping the entire demon realm remains completely impossible. He curses his impulsive hostage plan while searching for a less suicidal demand, as Westenka repeats that he will release them in exchange for preserving the heart, and Ichiya insists his companions must be freed first before he returns anything, only for Westenka to instantly launch himself forward, abandoning negotiation with terrifying speed. Ichiya desperately twists the organ's long tether aside and resists the sudden assault, then whips the golden heart across the laboratory, using its stretched vessel like a chain, charging directly toward Westenka with the pulsing organ transformed into a massive improvised weapon, until the demon's elongated green arm drives forward to intercept the golden projectile. Westenka's hardened limb punches straight through Ichiya's upper body, spraying blood across the laboratory, and the captive stares in stunned disbelief as red droplets cover his mouth and clothing, before collapsing to his knees with the demon calmly towering over his pierced body, then crashing heavily face down against the cold floor while blood spreads beneath his chest. The torn clothing exposes a small emblem Westenka recognizes as demonic, unexpectedly changing his judgment, while Heap panics over the fallen captive and urgently calls to his master, only for Westenka to point out the newly revealed sign with sudden interest, then address Heap in a measured tone that immediately halts the assistant's frantic reaction. Westenka reminds him that he had promised to catch the valuable heart during their attack, while Heap admits expecting Ichiya's death as the golden organ collapses into bubbling slime, leaving both demons staring at the pulsing mass while Heap defensively repeats his mistaken assumption, then offers to accept the unstable heart inside his own stitched body immediately. Westenka refuses because Heap remains immature and the powerful organ would completely consume him, ordering the assistant to preserve it until they can transplant it into wounded Ichiya, which puzzles Heap, who directly asks why his master would choose this particular human, until Westenka declares Ichiya essentially demonic, the human most biologically similar to their species. Demon organs accept demon hosts, whereas ordinary humans fuse with the heart and become impossible to separate, and Westenka warns that the same catastrophic consumption would currently happen to Heap, making the stitched assistant quietly ask whether he can receive the organ after maturing, while his master confirms that this eventual transplantation remains exactly their intended plan. Back near the food area, Peach hears a thunderous rumble and nervously asks its source, but Rage explains Big Mouth is merely snoring upstairs and promises this hidden room is safe, then says he understands her bond with Yi-Ye and Mengji's competing romantic intentions, calling that knowledge useful while promising to protect Peach until she reunites with him. Rage offers both humans escape from the cavern if they cooperate with his undisclosed plan, leaving Peach deeply suspicious and asking why any demon would sincerely help captive humans, and he answers that humans and demons are fundamentally no different from one another, before standing and announcing his departure without explaining the favor he eventually expects. Rage orders Peach to remain hidden, pointing toward boxes filled with daily necessities, and tells her to sleep inside the adjoining room while awaiting further news, although another mysterious sleeper named Night Sleeping Star already occupies the enormous bed, as Westenka completes Uchiha's bloody operation elsewhere and wipes his hands on stained cloth. The transplanted heart connects through a golden feeding tube while Westenka orders nutritional infusion, and Koiki tearfully watches beside Kambide, painfully identifying himself as another protective brother, while unconscious Uchiha lies newly stitched across the chest with the living tube covering his mouth, until Heap wonders whether they should secure him before the altered prisoner wakes again. The stitched assistant studies his master's work, uncertain whether further restraint is necessary, when one of Ichiya's eyes suddenly ignites with a brilliant yellow demonic light, and he violently surges upright, biting down on the golden tube with unnatural force, making Heap leap backward and call Lord Westenka as the transformed patient awakens. Heap raises a fist and rushes to restrain the awakened patient before he attacks, but the yellow-eyed Ichiya launches from the table with explosive speed and power, forcing the stitched assistant to twist around in alarm as his target passes overhead, while Ichiya's cheeks swell strangely, as though the transplanted organ fills him with pressure. He opens his glowing mouth and violently releases a dense cloud of yellow energy, which Heap punches through, only for the strange substance to engulf his attacking hand, making the assistant recoil in pain as glowing fluid and sharp fragments tear across it, while restrained Koike desperately calls Ichiya his brother and Kambedi watches beside him. Westenka dives from above to personally subdue the rampaging patient before he escapes, but Ichiya calmly tracks the rapidly descending demon through his bright yellow eyes, then flips over Westenka's charge with agility far beyond his previous human limits, rebounding across the laboratory as the demon extends a narrow spike from one blackened fingertip. Westenka drives that hardened point into Ichiya's shoulder, delivering an unknown green substance, yet the transformed captive merely swells both cheeks again instead of immediately collapsing, as startled guards pour through the fleshy doorway and demand an explanation from their master, only to be blasted aside when the confrontation erupts with a brilliant green impact. A hulking guard flies helplessly across the room while the experiment remains uncontrollable, and Westenka sharply orders everyone outside, insisting the battle is not remotely finished, before Ichiya throws back his head and spews an enormous column of glowing green vapor, leaving the red-eyed guard horrified by whatever new power the demon heart has awakened. The intruding guard recognizes the green vapor and blurts out its identity in shock, but Westenka immediately silences him, sternly warning that this secret is forbidden knowledge, while the guard's body swells into a grotesque trembling mass that barely recognizes its attacker, and Heap remembers wondering how a demon heart larger than Ichiya could fit inside. Westenka had explained 3 simple steps, beginning with opening the human body and inserting it, then sewing everything closed despite the absurdly swollen result his explanation originally imagined. Outside, several demons admire their new quarters and grudgingly praise the human builders, until an approaching powerful presence makes them glance upward in sudden collective alarm. Mengji hurtles overhead at tremendous speed, absolutely furious after learning Ichiya disappeared again, and recalls how Leah previously claimed something she had already chosen for herself, while now Westenka has repeated that offense by taking possession of her human, driving her into a rage because others keep stealing what she considers exclusively hers. Declaring Ichiya belongs to her, Mengji races toward Westenka's laboratory without any intention of politeness, where the transplanted captive sits weakly against stone, clutching his chest in severe pain, as the mutated guard begs Westenka for an injection called loss of sense, while Heap's ruined arm finally detaches after the yellow substance destroyed its connection. Westenka casually orders his assistant to choose another limb and stitch it onto himself, then commands the mutated intruder dismantled and thrown into the laboratory's nutrient furnace, while Ichiya returns to the test bed and the wall captives await their usual treatment, leaving Kambade, Koike, and another prisoner horrified by the execution implied in those words. At the laboratory entrance, multiple flesh mouths repeat Wastenka's order that nobody may enter, but Mengji smashes through the living barrier and every guard blocking her path, scattering battered demons across the floor before immediately demanding Wastenka reveal Ichia's exact location, while Heap fails to recognize the requested name and Wastenka teasingly calls her a human-seeking munchkin. Mengji cuts through his mockery and roars the missing captive's name with murderous intensity, so Wastenka addresses her familiarly and urges his furious visitor to calm down, dismissing the guards who apologize for failing to stop her violent forced entry, and ordering the door closed because their punishment can be handled much later. Wastenka jokingly asks whether she means the dead human and offers a better replacement, but Mengji's face darkens as she promises he will die if Ichiya suffered harm, making Wastenka wonder whether this particular human is truly special and whether she loves him, while the unexpected question freezes Mungi inside a storm of confused crimson emotion. Blushing, she denies love and insists their intimacy exists only for her reproductive mission, so Wastenka claims Ichiya was seriously hurt saving a human friend but received treatment, adding that recovery requires another month before agreeing to show her the patient, then leading Mungi and Heap toward a towering fleshy recovery chamber inside the laboratory. Its mouth opens to reveal Ichiya strapped upright with the golden feeding tube attached, and Mungji instantly demands what Wastenka has done while he insists everything is fine, explaining that these invasive measures are necessary treatments and the captive merely needs recovery. But she rejects his authority and declares she is taking back what belongs to her. Heap reaches toward Mungji and repeats that his master ordered the patient to remain, but she instantly slices off his replacement arm and orders every guard to stay silent, leaving the stitched assistant screaming that he had only just acquired that particular hand, as both detached limb and horrified owner collapse behind the unmoved demon general. Wastenka silently studies Mengji's fierce possessive determination before deciding whether resistance remains worthwhile, while she returns an unwavering stare that promises immediate violence if he refuses, until Wastenka concedes, surprised she would go so far for one ordinary human, and questions whether she truly intends to burden Ichichiya with demonkind's entire reproductive future. Mengji tells him to control his own subordinates first and reaches for her captive, but as she carries Ichiya away, Wastenka advises abandoning the mission for his research, then cites Mengji's humanity level as only 73.5 according to his measurements, claiming she lacks human reproductive organs and therefore cannot reproduce through human methods, until Heap awkwardly points out that Mengji and her human have already departed. Outside, she repeatedly calls Ichiya's name and tries waking him from transplant exhaustion, and he finally sits up, praises Mengji through confusion, then admits everything hurts, before noticing his closed chest wound and wondering what extraordinary change happened inside him, while Mengji casually explains that he was injured earlier but has now been healed. Memories of Wastenka's empalement and the bound prisoners abruptly return to Ichiya's mind, making him ask about Xiaoqi and the others, though Mengji saw nobody else, and she dismisses those concerns, declaring it is finally time he falls for her. Yi grips his aching head, overwhelmed by dizziness and the turmoil filling his thoughts, then asks Mengji to postpone today's lesson because his battered body still feels terrible, but she cheerfully refuses, waving him onward and insisting their courtship must continue, until thoughts of Peach strengthen his resolve and force him to accept anyway. He pictures the woman awaiting rescue, smiles through the pain, and agrees to proceed, while elsewhere Lord Shadeslayer kneels before the returning Leah and welcomes her home, though the exhausted demon immediately asks where the human assigned to serve her went, and learns Mengji took him, before Shadeslayer questions their frantic pace of construction. Leah explains that empty houses mean nothing without newborn demons to satisfy Demon Lord Yan Qing, then orders her subordinate to locate Ichiya and bring him back from Mengji, prompting Shadeslayer to observe that recovering one human matters far less than another objective, because disrupting Mengji's reproductive mission will prevent her from becoming the final winner. Back with Mengji, the relentless lessons continue until Ichiya finally drops from exhaustion, and one day he sprawls face down, relieved that another punishing session has ended, privately noticing that the terrifying demon woman has gradually become gentler toward him, before rejecting that sympathy, even as thoughts of Peach's suffering immediately trouble his conscience. Still panting on the floor, he tries to recover from the strain twisting his body, but his golden eyes flare as an unnatural sickness leaves every physical sense painfully overcharged, and a violent convulsion suddenly surges through his throat before he can react, making him vomit a bright green stream and wonder what Wastenka transformed inside him. The violent purge leaves Yi unconscious on his bedding beside the smoking green mess, while Wastenka explains that a small fruit monster always points its tail toward an implanted mark, then hands the creature to a masked hooded subordinate and orders constant surveillance, demanding complete records of Ichisha's behavior without ever letting Mengjiya discover their secret. Left alone, the curious observer twists and squeezes the round creature to test it, laughing when its glowing tail instantly snaps back toward the marked human's direction, before crawling through the cavern because Westenka has placed a human under unprecedented surveillance, and wondering why Mungji performs so many inexplicable rituals with her captive alone. Near her dwelling, the observer discovers Huan sitting guard beside the closed entrance, while Lord Shadeslayer also finds Ichia but doubts he can defeat Mungji's nearby servant, so Leah's cautious subordinate settles at a distance and decides merely to watch, leaving both secret spies waiting side by side until surveillance becomes painfully boring. Inside, Yi suddenly jolts upright, shouting for the demons to stop tormenting him, then gasps through ragged breaths as the unbearable overstimulation finally begins subsiding completely, only to discover the apparent water surrounding his bedding is actually his own sweat, though his body now feels considerably better after finally receiving enough proper rest. He cannot understand recovering so freely despite exhaustion and Westenka's enormous chest wound, as every disaster since the invasion crashes together nearly suffocates him with uncertainty. Yet he wipes his eyes, rises again, and forces himself to keep moving before drawing back his arm and preparing to test his recovered strength against the wall. Yi drives a furious strike forward while loudly condemning every evil demon tormenting him, and the impact blasts straight through the cavern wall, scattering enormous chunks of stone, leaving him frozen in disbelief as he stares at the hand responsible alone. When the dust clears, an immense circular breach surrounds the astonished young prisoner, who nervously examines both palms and realizes his strength has transformed beyond recognition, just as Lord Shadeslayer materializes beside him and demands to know how he accomplished it, but the startled human angrily recognizes Leah's subordinate and calls him a despicable predator. Shadeslayer dismisses every question, then streaks away while promising explanations during their journey, causing the fruit monster's tail to change direction and shocking Westenka's distant observer, as Leah's agent dives onto Yi, attempting to seize and carry him away, though the furious captive immediately resists this sudden abduction with every ounce of strength, grabs the demon mid-charge, and turns the capture into a chaotic airborne grapple. Both bodies crash across the rocky ground before bouncing apart amid flying debris, and Shadeslayer warns that struggling only makes transporting another person much more difficult, while Yi demands where he is being taken and refuses to cooperate, until the demon explains that Lord Leah merely wants to see her missing human. Unconvinced, Yi scrambles behind a stone pillar and clings tightly to its surface, but Shadeslayer advances without concern, calmly repeating that they must leave together now, then pins the resisting captive against the rock and wraps both arms around him, producing a furious face-to-face stalemate as Yi orders his captor to release him. Yi suddenly heaves forward, using his enhanced strength to break Shadeslayer's grip, and flings the startled demon backward while stumbling safely away across the rocks, but Shadeslayer rises again, demanding that Ichia stop resisting and come willingly now, while Yi declares himself Mungji's man and insists she must authorize any departure. Since Lee and Mungji despise each other, he knows such permission will never arrive, so he tells Shadeslayer to return alone and report that Mungji refused his release, only for the demon to rush behind him and attempt another forceful seizure, beginning a strained contest as both fighters grunt and struggle together for leverage. Shadeslayer admits he cannot abandon the mission because Leah will punish his failure, and reveals that her other workplaces successfully adopted Ichia's individual labor system everywhere, prompting Yi to ask whether workers completing their assignments truly received freedom, though Shadeslayer cannot answer, offering only to investigate once they reach Leah together. Yi refuses and retreats into a narrow opening between towering stone formations, calculating that Shadeslayer can approach from only one direction and preparing an ambush, while the demon sighs that his difficult captive has chosen the painful method, then transforms into purple light and flashes directly inside toward the hidden prisoner. Yi launches his prepared counterattack the instant his opponent emerges before him, driving one full-powered fist toward the airborne demon with confidence and precise timing, but Shadeslayer intercepts the strike with a violent burst of concentrated purple force, sending Yi crashing backward while the relentless subordinate charges after him again. Shadeslayer becomes a snaking ribbon of purple light that curves through the narrow passage, then rematerializes beside Yi and catches the battered captive beneath one arm. But Yi repeatedly punches his carrier's face, furiously demanding to be released, until Shadeslayer's hurried footing slips against broken rock and completely destroys his balance. Both combatants tumble violently across the cavern floor, battered by stone and debris, while the frustrated demon calls Ichia an idiot and insists this abduction will help him. But Yi refuses again and swings as Shadeslayer dissolves into purple light, circling him with glowing trails while promising Leah will free every worker who finished. Yi braces himself as several purple paths flicker around him from every direction, yet Shadeslayer's Slayer emerges behind his defenses and launches another flying attack toward him, only for Mungji to suddenly descend between them and disrupt the demon's charge, prompting the relieved captive to shout her name as she shields him safely. Mengji demands why Leah still pursues her man and reminds Shadeslayer who owns him, but the subordinate apologizes and proposes that both sides speak with Leah together, provoking Mengji to reject negotiation and threaten Leah's magic guard with immediate death, while Shadeslayer calmly invites her reckless attempt, confident she cannot possibly reach him. Enraged, Mengji enlarges one black shadow hand and lunges violently across the battlefield, smashing down with tremendous force but striking only empty ground as Shadeslayer vanishes. Then the elusive demon instantly reappears behind Yi Yi and touches his shoulder, escaping as purple light while apologizing to Mungji for stealing her captive again. Mungji's face darkens with murderous rage as the fleeing subordinate shouts another terrified apology, and her glowing red eyes promise devastating punishment soon for Shadeslayer's successful theft, while the purple trail races through the cavern and urges its struggling passengers still, until Shadeslayer rematerializes above Leah's position and drops Ichiya directly before his master. The human hits the rocky slope headfirst and tumbles helplessly through scattered debris, then groans on the ground disoriented and badly bruised after the humiliating delivery, before noticing Leah's armored boot planted beside his face and looking upward nervously as she demands where her human disappeared without ever receiving her permission first. Ichiya starts explaining that he left to find additional servants, but his answer falters, because Leah spots Mengji hurtling closer and mockingly welcomes her furious rival back, who immediately attacks, only for Leah to intercept her charge with effortless confidence, leaving both demonic lords openly staring each other down with equally lethal intent. Mengji unleashes a rapid barrage of shadow-handed strikes while Leah counters every blow, and their blinding exchange tears across the newly constructed chamber with destructive shockwaves, forcing terrified demon workers to beg someone stronger to end the catastrophic fight, since every missed attack threatens to demolish Leah's newly completed nearby lair entirely. Shadeslayer desperately pushes Ichiya forward, insisting only he might persuade them to stop, while Mengji accuses Leah of greedily stealing every person and prize she desires. But Leah calls Ichiya hers, mocks Mengji's love game, and offers to kill him, prompting Mengji to lunge again and swear that Leah will die before her human. The rival generals pause their assault and exchange one final murderous glare across the wreckage, when a smiling flame-wreathed demon named Fire arrives and orders both women to stop, prompting Mengji to ask why he abandoned the southern campaign against surviving humans, and Fire announces that the demon lord returned and summoned every general immediately. Both rivals absorb the alarming news, temporarily setting aside their violent personal dispute, while Wastenka's hooded observer desperately runs through the cavern carrying its tracking creature, terrified that Leah and Mengji will kill him if they discover his surveillance, as Yi finally rests among the workers after the generals abandon their battle. Learning that humans still resist demons in the frozen south restores his fading hope, though Shadeslayer again questions his unnatural strength and asks about current construction progress, reports only 30% completion, then presses Ichiya to explain his transformed body. But the human instead asks what happened to everyone Wastenka captured inside his laboratory. Shadeslayer calls those captives research subjects and expects several groups to return within days, making Yi realize Wastenka's research caused his power, despite never understanding the procedure, before he suddenly senses an internal seal cracking and something dangerous forcing its way outward, until spotting the blue-haired youth makes him forget Shadeslayer's question and shout Xiao Qi. The delighted boy recognizes brother Ichiya and rushes toward him with open relief, while Yi celebrates Xiaoqi's survival and urgently asks where their companions remain, then demands an explanation for everything Wastenka did to him during the previous day. And Xiaoqi begins by recalling the green experimenter piercing him after the heart's destruction. Koike explains that something Wastenka placed within Ichiya suddenly snapped during the procedure, then nervously admits the researchers had also done something terrible to his own body, as nearby laborers notice the trembling boy and recoil from his increasingly unnatural appearance before Koike collapses, leaving Ichiya scrambling toward his suffering little brother in alarm. Dark scales spread across Koike's limbs as he warns he is becoming another monster, and the boy arches backward screaming while bones, muscles, and claws violently expand, until his familiar face twists into a fanged demon visage with blazing red eyes, forcing Ichiya to stare helplessly while the transformed youth hisses toward him again. Koike's body grows taller and heavier as jagged blue armor erupts across his limbs, leaving a massive horned creature standing where the small human boy had collapsed, while Ichiya calls his brother's name and desperately asks what Wastenka did now. But Shadeslayer instantly charges the perceived threat and strikes Koike across the cavern. The mutated boy skids through broken stone as Leah's servant races after him, demanding to know how Wastenka created this monstrous creature from an ordinary human, though confused Koike only recognizes the demon's voice voice and cannot remember his identity, prompting Ichiya to call Shadeslayer by the alternate name Shadow Swipe and demand restraint. Koike instead raises both enlarged arms, gathering his new strength for a crushing attack, then slams the ground hard enough to shatter stone while his opponent evades, and Shadow Swipe immediately rushes back into range, confident he can subdue him, but Koike's armored counterstrike catches the demon and sprays blood through the air. Shadow Swipe crashes headfirst into broken stone, leaving blood spread beneath his stunned body. While Koike marvels at his overwhelming strength and feels every part of life changing, then hears panicked voices calling for Wang Li and the missing Judge Wu nearby. But newfound power twists his excitement into murderous confidence as he promises revenge. Ichiya tells Koike to wait while another transformed captive attacks a former tormentor, then launches himself between them and kicks the wounded human away from certain death, landing beside the fallen attacker as frightened workers scatter across the chaotic worksite before watching Koike regroup with several transformed captives among their unconscious human victims. Another red-eyed mutant bounds across the rocks, hunting someone through the fleeing crowd, while Koike asks Wang Li how his powerful new body feels after transformation, and a terrified red-haired man begs Koike's forgiveness while calling him a demon lord. But Koike raises one armored fist overhead, completely unmoved by the desperate pleading. Ichiya catches the descending arm and orders his enraged brother to calm down, leaving the intended victim shocked to recognize little Koike inside this monstrous body. Though Koike insists revenge has finally arrived and commands Ichiya to step aside, forcing Ichiya to shove the massive striking limbs safely away from its target. Koike names his longtime bully Wang Wan, while the terrified man appeals to their hometown bond, then says captured Judge Wu was lucky and declares Wang Wan will replace him before charging again as Ichiya firmly plants himself directly between monster and victim, catching Koki's huge arm and reminding him that transformation does not eliminate hope. Ichiya warns that copying their tormentors will make Koki's humanity impossible to recover, but his brother says becoming a demon changes nothing and claims Ichiya cannot understand, remembering how human powerlessness invited constant bullying before transformation finally reversed their positions. While Ichiya listens silently, recognizing the deep bitterness driving his brother's murderous choices. Koike declares that strength rules their world and savors versing predator and prey, then orders Wang Li to run and promises death if he catches him, forcing Ichiya to accept that saving the frightened workers means stopping Koike personally, as the transformed boy suddenly surges forward and swings an enormous armored fist. Koike's punch drives through Ichiya's guard with enough force to bend him backward, then follows with another sweeping strike while his opponent desperately shifts farther away, before smashing downward and pulverizing the ground where Ichiya had just been standing, though the human narrowly escapes, lands nearby, and braces himself for another exchange. Ichiya argues that humans possess feelings and must reject the senseless violence defining demons, but Koki says such weakness caused their enslavement and tells him to examine himself, revealing that Ichiya's eyes have turned yellow while a blue horn pierces his hair, and warning his horrified brother that the same demonic transformation has already begun. Ichiya studies his altered reflection in disbelief as the new horn becomes unmistakable, while Koike urges him to forget worry and embrace the thrilling strength ahead, leaving the shaken captive touching his horn and realizing Wastenka's change is advancing, until Koike mentions similar mutants near Peach's food zone and suggests visiting them together. Ichiya remembers asking Menji about Peach while riding behind her through the cavern, and her assurance that Peach remains safe despite the delayed report from her negotiations, then returns to the present, urgently asking Koike whether Peach is truly nearby, while Koike confirms it and calls this information his final reward to brother Ichiya. Ichiya asks Koike to come along, promising that Menji's favor could also save him, but the transformed boy rejects advice from someone who never endured his miserable life, clenches one armored fist, and declares he will finally choose whatever benefits himself, before telling Ichiya to visit his beloved and walking away without any regret. The shaken older brother calls Xiaoqi after him, unwilling to accept their separation, yet Koike only laughs softly and answers his brother's familiar call from behind, then abandons his old identity by demanding everyone call him Chichu henceforth, celebrating that his expanding demonic body now feels stronger with every passing moment. Chichu decides that he and Wang Li possess enough power to kill everyone, as transformed prisoners attack surrounding demons and impose strength through brutal domination nearby, spreading chaos across the worksite until terrified survivors beg them to stop immediately, while Ichiya abandons pursuit and rushes nearby to revive the unconscious Shadow Swipe. The battered demon awakens groaning, his pale face now smeared heavily with blood, only for Ichiya to seize him and demand immediate transportation toward the food section, gripping the wounded servant's arm before he can avoid answering the frantic request, then repeating the command now with blazing yellow eyes and visibly growing desperation. Elsewhere, a colossal horned demon statue burns above the gathering of summoned generals, where Leah mocks Mengji for transferring carbon rather than keeping him near her human, then complains that Mengji previously killed one amusing servant Leah once particularly enjoyed, But Mengji says he deserved death and refuses to tolerate Leah's interference anymore. Leah threatens to kill Carbon after the meeting, provoking another furious warning from Mengji, while Westenka quietly sits among them, stroking a tiny creature and observing their hostility, until Fire interrupts both arguing generals and calls the entire gathering to attention, announcing that the awaited Devil King has finally entered their council chamber at last. A towering flame-crowned ruler commands Leah and Mengji to end their quarrel immediately, introducing himself as Demon King Flame and demanding discussion of the Devil Mother's business. While near the food section, a fleeing figure changes direction to escape relentless mutants, and a tall blue-horned guard strangles one transformed captive against the rocks. Several altered humans already lie bloodied around the guard as he controls the battlefield, before his glowing cyan eyes notice new movement approaching through the chaotic area, where Ichiya now hurls his battered guide forward while desperately racing toward Peach, and Shadow Swipe begs the towering guard to help contain the violent mutants. He points toward Ichiya and calls him another threatening mutant, while the human shouts Peach's name, but the guard asks his identity and learns both Leah and Mengji claim Ichiya, then suspects Westenka also experimented on him after hearing about the recently captured group, as Shadow Swipe urges immediate pursuit but admits he cannot defeat the changing human. Rage asks whether mutants appeared here too, and Shadeslayer admits they are overrunning every sector. While wondering what Westenka intends, Rage decides this outbreak gives him a valuable opportunity. The battered servant recognizes Rage, but the food guard silences him with a cold stare. Rage suddenly boots Shadeslayer upward, revealing ruthless strength before the astonished transformed prisoner. He catches the limp servant by one leg and raises him effortlessly above shattered stone. Then Rage swings his captive downward, turning Shadeslayer's body into another brutal demonstration. Bleeding heavily, Shadeslayer desperately calls Rage's name and begs him not to continue. Rage answers by smashing the helpless servant headfirst into the ground with overwhelming force. As Shadeslayer smolders in the crater, Rage boasts that generalship suits him better than guard duty. His glowing eyes narrow as he calmly demands agreement with that dangerous ambition. Watching this casual brutality, Ichiya freezes beneath Rage's predatory attention and cannot answer. Rage changes tactics, revealing he controls Peach's location and ordering Ichiya to follow him. Ichiya races down the hidden stone steps, repeatedly shouting Peach's name into the chamber. His frantic calls finally reach Peach, who runs forward in astonished relief at seeing him. The reunited lovers embrace tightly, each overwhelmed to discover that the other survived. Peach immediately notices Ichiya's yellow eyes and blue horn, fearfully asking what happened. He reassures her that the transformation has not erased his identity. While Rage watches approvingly, Peach then explains Mengji visited her cage after being told to rescue her. Her next revelation shocks Ichiya. Mengji attempted to kill Peach instead of saving her. Rage explains that Mengji's jealousy turned Peach into a romantic obstacle she once eliminated. Ichiya struggles to decide whether Mengji's newfound jealousy should make him happy or deeply afraid. Preferring Raging as his name, the guard offers to return Peach secretly to Earth. The promised escape sounds tempting, but Ichiya remains cautious about trusting this ambitious demon. Raging cites hiding Peach instead of killing her as proof that his cooperation is sincere. He plans to tell Mengji that Peach was processed as food, permanently removing her leverage. With Peach presumed dead, neither Mengji nor Leah could exploit Ichiya through his beloved companion. Ichiya judges Raging by his protective actions and asks what assistance the demon actually wants. Raging finally states his price. Ichiya must help him secure appointment as a demon general. He explains every demon comes from a demon mother, whose reproductive ability is steadily collapsing. This decline threatens demon survival, sending 4 demon generals searching separately for an answer. Raging admires how Ichiya guided Mengji's search toward human reproduction and manipulated her dependence. By delaying proof through romance, Ichiya made the powerful general increasingly reliant upon his presence. Peach interrupts the political discussion, gently asking whether the terrible wound on his chest still hurts. Ichiya reveals the pain vanished completely and his transformed body now feels stronger than before. He asks what Westenka's experiments mean and whether transformed humans face further dangerous changes. Raging insists their alliance is personal rather than racial, but knows little about Westenka's research. Each general controls separate affairs, so their guards rarely understand another faction's secret operations. Raging suspects Westenka now transforms humans while searching for an alternative path to demon reproduction. Promising an investigation, Raging calls a subordinate named Kane down from the hidden stairway. When Kane appears, Raging orders him to check Ichiya for an implanted etiolated bug. Kane extends probing tendrils across Ichiya and confirms Westenka planted the direction tracking worm inside him. Realizing he remains traceable, Ichiya recoils in alarm while the tendrils continue their inspection. Kane explains the device only reveals direction and probably reports through a subordinate observer. Raging sends Kane to recruit Eugene, capture the pursuing demon, and conceal the recovered tracker. Ichiya decides he must return before Mengji's meeting ends or his absence raises suspicion. Raging dismisses that urgency, warning Ichiya instead about explaining Shadeslayer's apparent death now. He bluntly accuses Ichiya of killing the servant who transported him into this hidden district. Raging calmly proposes blaming the rampaging mutants, providing their alliance with convenient political cover. Ichiya accepts the ruthless deception with a knowing laugh, recognizing Raging's talent for manipulation. Because only 4 general seats exist, Raging must kill an incumbent to claim one. His target is Big Mouth, the strongest general, who secretly plans to overthrow the Demon King. Other demons also fear that unpredictable ambition, making Big Mouth's elimination politically defensible. Raging reveals Big Mouth directly commands him and controls the cavern's entire human food operation. Meanwhile, Demon King Flame calls Big Mouth's attention back toward the gathered council. The enormous food lord barely responds, so Flame abandons that topic and continues the meeting. Leah reports sharply improved shelter construction, allowing deeper demons to migrate upwards soon. Flame praises her success but says today's true purpose concerns the failing demon mother. He reports 2 newborn demons appeared after Westenka's new medicine temporarily strengthened the mother. The treatment can sustain 1 full birth, yet cannot solve demonkind's underlying reproductive collapse. Mungji then asks Flame about his own mother's condition, shifting attention toward his royal family. Flame admits the demon mother remains depressed and withdrawn despite her temporarily restored fertility. Mungji demands stopping Westenka's injections because every forced birth consumes more of the mother's life. Others argue the mother is already withering naturally, making risky intervention difficult to reject. Flame orders Mengji calm, insisting demon reproduction demands every available attempt at survival. Fire suddenly interrupts the council, reporting an urgent disturbance outside that requires immediate attention. He then confronts Westenka and demands the experimenter stop playing games and explain himself. Demon King Flame addresses Westenka as his brother, his glowing eyes demanding an answer. Westenka sits beside his small specimen while Flame asks exactly what he has done. Back underground, Ichiya wonders whether Raging's humanity is genuine or merely politically useful. That uneasy reflection ends when Raging greets the awakened resident named Night Sleeping Star. She recognizes Ichiya from Peach's stories, surprising him with another human survivor inside the chamber. Night Sleeping Star explains that Peach talked about him constantly because they secretly lived together. Peach formally introduces the aloof woman as another protected resident of Raging's hidden refuge. Ichiya recognizes her as the Night family's youngest grandmaster and a legendary martial artist. Years earlier, she ranked 2nd worldwide, surpassed only by her own powerful father. Her father later died fighting demons during humanity's devastating war against the invading armies. Raging identifies the fatal opponent as former demon general Asagiri and offers respectful condolences. Ichiya hesitantly studies Night Sleeping Star, expecting anger or a demand for revenge. Raging praises his compassion, joking that such sensitivity explains his success navigating 3 demons. She rejects inherited vengeance, saying her father willingly fought and she has accepted his choice. Raging explains Night Sleeping Star escaped the food area alone and defeated several guards. She refused returning surface side because avoiding roaming demons would create too much constant trouble. Raging therefore granted the independent warrior her own concealed room within his protected refuge. As she retires, Cain returns from above and quietly calls Raging over with troubling news. Shadeslayer's body has been moved. While Cain senses something abnormal inside the transformed Ichiya, Cain says his condition differs from Westenka's other mutants, especially around the emerging horns. Meanwhile, Peach asks whether Ichiya still possesses the necklace bearing her family's crest. He remembers receiving it during childhood, but reluctantly admits the treasured necklace is gone. Elsewhere, Flame engulfs a raging transformed human in fire and hurls him violently downward. The burning mutant crashes into broken stone beneath the demon general's cold inspection. Leah asks whether Westenka created this deformed attacker whose mind has collapsed into violence. Westenka admits altering many bodies, though demonic instinct overwhelmed most subjects and destroyed control. The suffering mutant incoherently mentions Leah, Wang Li, and Shadeslayer while flames consume him. Hearing Shadeslayer's name, Leah immediately demands what Westenka did to her missing servant. The dying transformed prisoner lies laughing, despite terrible burns, blood, and shattered flesh. Furious, Leah attacks Westenka while blaming his damned human experiments for Shadeslayer's disappearance. Westenka restrains her and insists the surviving specimen must be preserved for further study. Flame notices evidence connecting the mutant to Shadeslayer and demands his brother provide a credible explanation. Westenka calls human-to-demon mutation his dangerous first incomplete attempt at solving demon reproduction. Flame asks whether Westenka intends transforming all lowly humans into demons for survival. Westenka echoes Flame's earlier command to try everything, calling mutation a new path for demonkind. Leah ignores his argument and lunges to kill the mutant she believes murdered Shadeslayer. Flame intercepts Leah's attack with burning force, firmly calling the enraged general back. He reminds her that preserving Westenka's research serves the entire demon race above personal vengeance. Back at the refuge, Raging announces Big Mouth's return and takes Ichiya to meet him. Before leaving, Raging insists Ichiya change clothes to conceal his stitched experimental wounds. Ichiya emerges in a fitted white outfit taken from another human once held nearby. Though disturbed by its origin, he follows Raging toward the returning food lord. Ichiya confirms every general commands only one official demon guard beneath their authority. He questions how Raging can seek rank while still treating his subordinates as equals. To each Chia, craving command while rejecting hierarchy sounds like an obvious contradiction indeed. Raging answers that whoever performs a general's duties with matching strength deserves that title. Ichiya concludes demons share human jealousy, love, and ambition despite claiming fundamental superiority. Yet Big Mouth's overwhelming body and endless hunger for strength make killing him strategically dangerous. Nevertheless, Ichiya clenches his fist and resolves to help Raging weaken the demon establishment. He hopes defeating Big Mouth can also restore human influence within this brutal underground order. The enormous food lord towers before them as Raging formally welcomes his master home. Big Mouth recognizes Raging and responds sluggishly, his red eyes exhausted after the council, complaining that meetings create unbearable pressure. He suddenly collapses backward like an overwhelmed child. Ichiya stares, unable to reconcile this helpless behavior with rumors of a world-conquering tyrant. Raging watches carefully and privately notes that someone named Ben remains part of his plan. Meanwhile, Mingji races through the cavern shouting desperately for her endangered demon mother. Carbon rushes from the mother's chamber to greet his returning lord, visibly frightened. Mingji seizes him and demands why he failed to stop Wistenka's dangerous experiments. Before Carbon can explain, she furiously hurls her magical guard across the cavern. Bloodied, Carbon protests that a mere guard could never overrule a demon general. Mengji reaches the immense living mother and anxiously asks whether she remains conscious. A warm tendril touches Mengji's face, reassuring the frightened general with maternal affection. Mengji begs her mother to stop reproducing, valuing her continued life above new demons. Watching nearby, Carbon recalls Han Shui and believes she would have opposed this sacrifice. The mother asks about human-style reproduction, immediately renewing Mengji's hope for another solution. Mengji promises to master that method so Westenka's fatal injections become unnecessary forever. She eagerly announces another experiment after leaving and urges her mother to endure. Carbon silently watches his lord's determination, unable to interfere with her reckless new course. Before Big Mouth, Raging identifies Ichiya as Mengji's slave searching for his human companion. The food lord leans closer and bluntly asks whether they managed to find her. Raging lies smoothly that the missing woman had already been processed into food. He promises a replacement slave for Mengji and encourages the exhausted general to rest. Big Mouth accepts this explanation and waddles away, focused only on eating and becoming stronger. Left behind, Ichiya and Raging exchange wary looks after their dangerous deception succeeds. Ichiya calls Big Mouth childlike, and Raging confirms the powerful general is genuinely naive. Big Mouth rose through unmatched physical strength while caring only about becoming even stronger. Raging secretly created the conquest rumor, exploiting that childish reputation to frighten competing generals. As they walk away, Ichiya finally asks what exact role he must play. Raging explains every general believed his rumor except Mengji, whose only concern was her mother. He plans to tell Big Mouth that eating Wistenka's transformed Ichiya would increase his strength. Horrified, Ichiya realizes Raging intends offering him directly to the strongest man as food. Raging will warn Big Mouth that Mengji may interfere, causing the timid general to retreat. That confrontation should make Mengji hostile toward Big Mouth and prepare later stages of Raging's scheme. Raging reassures Ichiya that Big Mouth trusts his every claim and fears Mengji's assertiveness. Big Mouth depends completely on Raging because his guard supported his rise and performs his duties. Ichiya sees the logic but worries that provoking Mengji by becoming prey leaves him exposed. His survival depends on whether Mengji still values him enough to confront a stronger general. Raging orders him to warn Mengji about Big Mouth's appetite. Ensuring the trap develops naturally, Ichiya presses for his next action, but Raging refuses to predict events beyond that point. He says later decisions depend on circumstances and mentions someone should already have returned. Raging reveals Peach briefly visited Earth to verify his promise and has now returned. Peach runs into Ichiya's arms, confirming she safely reached the surface before coming back. She reports many humans survive hidden in shallow shelters and can genuinely receive released captives. Raging claims peaceful intentions and asks when Ichiya is ready to begin their dangerous operation. They schedule the scheme within days, and Raging arranges Ichiya's immediate return to Mengji. Before departing, Ichiya asks Peach to return permanently to Earth and await him there. Peach refuses through tears, insisting she should remain beside him through the coming danger. Ichiya embraces her firmly and asks her to trust that he will return safely. Peach searches his changed face, understanding that love requires letting him finish this mission. She finally promises to wait on the surface and tenderly asks him to survive. Their farewell ends with a kiss, sealing Ichiya's promise to reunite after victory. Wistenka's hooded observer reaches the food area, exhausted from following the fruit tracker. Before reporting Ichiya's location, a hidden attacker strikes the masked spy with overwhelming speed. The tracking creature tumbles beside the unconscious observer, preventing Wistenka from receiving his answer. Elsewhere, Fire approaches Demon King Flame inside the throne chamber with a grim casualty report. The mutant incident killed 34 demons and 136 humans before cleanup finished. Fire wonders whether demons should return to their ancient brutality, but Flame gives no guidance. Alone afterward, the ruler broods silently over demon survival and the violence spreading underground. Flame gathers a small blaze above his palm, concentrating memory and longing into its shape. He releases the fire across the chamber, where it expands into a luminous human silhouette. The apparition carries the name Han Shui, revealing someone whose memory still haunts, the Demon King. Surrounded by living flames, Han Shui's image seems to ask whether he has committed another wrong. Back with Ichiya, Raging warns that Mengji will eventually demand genuine human reproduction. Ichiya accepts that possibility, knowing delay bought Peach safety even if reproduction ultimately fails. Raging advises serious thought, warning Mengji may demand immediate proof rather than tolerate delay. He reminds Ichiya that demons and humans remain biologically different despite their emotional similarities. Most importantly, Mengji lacks the human reproductive organs required for Ichiya's invented method. Wastenka measures demons through humanization values, describing how closely their bodies resemble human anatomy. Greater humanization usually brings both human-like form and increased strength, though Big Mouth defies that pattern. Ichiya asks whether Mengji understands this problem, but Raging believes she knows nothing. Managing demon breeding kept her isolated from humans, leaving her humanization far below reproductive readiness. Their escort reaches Mengji's fang-lined residence, where her servant announces the general will return soon. A small pink-haired demon confronts Ichiya inside, studying him openly with immediate resentment. She warns the lowly human not to exploit Mengji's affection or wander beyond permission. Ichiya pauses at her hostility, recognizing another devoted follower who resents his privileged position. The servant insists Mengji's love grants him no authority and orders him to remember his inferiority. Smiling provocatively, Ichi asks whether her contempt really means she secretly despises Mengji. She panics and declares Mengji her idol, claiming the warning protects her beloved general. Ichiya pins her against the wall and accuses her of doubting Mengji's judgment in choosing him. Enraged, the servant lashes out with her long feathered scarf and orders him silent. Ichiya catches the scarf, condemning her attempt to harm someone whom Mengji personally selected. He leans close with transformed yellow eyes, turning her devotion into fear through sheer confidence. His smile disappears, as he asks whether the trembling servant truly wants to die. Terrified by his demonic aura and sudden threat, the pink-haired follower screams helplessly. Ichiya releases the servant with a humiliating flick and demands greater respect from now onward. Mengji arrives calling for Kira Velvet, confirming the frightened pink-haired follower's full name. Kira retreats outside while Mengji immediately notices the large horn growing from Ichiya's forehead. He explains Wastenka caused the transformation and may have changed him like yesterday's mutants. Mengji stares in alarm, asking whether the human she selected has become a demon. Ichiya admits uncertainty and asks what happened to the other mutants after the council. Mengji's shock becomes excitement when she wonders whether demonic transformation makes reproduction possible. Abandoning every concern, she shakes with anticipation and orders herself to forget restraint. Mengji leaps onto Ichiya, declaring they should attempt human-style reproduction immediately without waiting another moment. He catches the eager general and desperately begs her to wait before proceeding. Mengji insists she wants to reproduce like a human right now. Rejecting further delay, Ichiya invokes falling in love first, but she claims her overflowing feelings already qualify. Kira suddenly interrupts, warning that Lord Big Mouth has arrived outside the residence. Mengji angrily dismisses him, refusing to abandon her urgent experiment with Ichiya now. Big Mouth answers by smashing through the residence wall and looming over the startled pair. Kira screams his identity while Ichiya moves protectively between the intruder and Mengja. Earlier, Raging fed Big Mouth transformed corpses and asked whether they produced noticeable changes. Big Mouth reported their altered flesh differed from ordinary humans. Though the taste remained unpleasant, Raging claimed consuming specially transformed Ichiya would grant Big Mouth an enormous strength increase. Big Mouth hesitates because Ichiya already lost his companion, yet hunger and ambition remain. Raging repeatedly challenges whether Big Mouth truly wants strength. Overcoming the general's childish hesitation, he keeps pressing the promise of greater power until his master's uncertainty finally breaks. Big Mouth loudly declares his endless desire to become stronger and demands Ichiya's location. Raging hands him Wastenka's recovered tracker, still keyed to the mark implanted in Ichiya. He warns that Ichiya serves Mengji and orders retreat if her temper blocks the attack. Big Mouth eagerly accepts every instruction, believing only that eating the human guarantees strength. Guided by the tracker, the enormous general smashes straight toward Ichiya through Mengji's walls. Big Mouth demands permission to eat him, turning the stage threat into immediate deadly pursuit. His charge tears through stone with explosive force, filling the residence with blinding debris. Ichiya launches himself aside and grins fiercely, testing his transformed agility against overwhelming mass. A massive strike pulverizes the floor exactly where he stood, proving one mistake means death. Mengji also dives clear as another impact erupts between her and the pursuing monster. She angrily confronts Big Mouth, demanding why he intends to devour her chosen human. Big Mouth freezes upon seeing Mengji, suddenly remembering Raging's warning about her temper, the obedient general decides he must abandon the attack immediately and make another plan later. Big Mouth turns toward the broken exit and begins retreating across the shattered chamber. Mengji races after him, refusing to let the intruder escape without explaining his assault. Her red eyes burn with fury as she curses Big Mouth and accelerates behind him. Mengji unleashes a towering red-white aura, promising the fleeing general exactly what he provoked. Big Mouth continues lumbering away, unaware how violently her gathering power threatens his escape. Big Mouth remembers Raging deliberately offered him the glorious chance to capture and devour Ichiya. Convinced Mengji would never truly fight over a human, he still dreams of growing stronger. Earlier, Ichi had questioned Raging about the terrifying extent of Mengji's mysterious combat abilities. Raging explained that the black portions of her body could release devastating impacts at will. Those impacts produce different results according to the distance and area Mengji chooses to strike. Her most direct technique is fittingly named Chopping Attack, a brutally simple display of force. Back in the cavern, Big Mouth turns and bellows as his enormous jaws open wide. Mengji instantly dives from above and smashes him downward with a blazing black-red strike. The wounded giant immediately begins begging Ichiya to let him eat him and gain strength. Charging again, Big Mouth barrels through the cavern wall while Mengji closes from behind. His crushing impact tears stone apart, yet her airborne pursuit remains completely unhindered by debris. Mengji's blazing eyes lock onto the fleeing general as she angrily roars his name. She orders Big Mouth to get out, then attacks before his panicked body can escape. One overwhelming blow sends the supposedly indestructible general crashing violently through layers of rock. As dust engulfs the shattered ground, Kira watches Big Mouth lie helpless beneath Mengji's power. Escaping nearby, Ichiya realizes even that gigantic body can be flattened by her effortless strength. Big Mouth supposedly possesses demonkind's strongest physique, making this casual defeat almost impossible to comprehend. Nevertheless, the battered giant suddenly pushes himself upright, still conscious beneath the broken stone. Confused by Mengji's fury, he decides understanding is unnecessary and resumes fleeing at full speed. Mengji pursues relentlessly, convinced Big Mouth has gone mad and the rebellion rumors are true. Returning to Ichiya, Mengji furiously demands why Big Mouth stared at him and expected strength. Ichiya honestly insists he knows nothing, since he has never even met the rampaging general. Before suspicion grows, Kira urgently points toward a strange creature crawling across the broken cavern. Mengji seizes the creature and identifies it as an eternal starebug carrying an orange eye. When its eye points directly toward Ichiya, the hidden connection becomes impossible to dismiss. Mengji concludes Wastenka injected him and manipulated Big Mouth, instantly redirecting her rage toward the experimenter. She grabs Ichiya and races away, determined to learn exactly what Wastenka has done. They reach Wastenka among his altered subjects, where Mengji demands answers about both men immediately. Holding up the tracking creature, she accuses him of pretending it was not his handiwork. Wastenka's guarded stare hardens as recognition dawns, and he studies the evidence before him. He asks where the creature came from, but Mengji crushes it and names Big Mouth. She explains Big Mouth followed the tracker and claimed eating Ichiya would grant greater strength. Wastenka merely urges her to calm down, remaining suspiciously composed beneath her furious accusation. Calling everything an experiment, he watches Ichiya beside the mutants and notices something unexpectedly strange. Wastenka advances and sharply questions how Ichiya acquired the new horn growing from his head. The furious prisoner claims ignorance and throws responsibility back at the demon who transformed him. Instead, Wastenka asks whether the missing family crest necklace once belonged to Ichiya personally. Then he attacks without warning, demanding whether his increasingly demonic subject remains human at all. Wastenka catches Ichiya's leg and presses the necklace question, but receives a trembling denial. Mengji immediately launches a crushing kick, ordering Wastenka to release her chosen human. While Ichiya recovers, Wastenka privately realizes the implanted heart is consuming him instead of creating a demon. Because the heart was healed only recently, however, the experimenter believes some solution might remain. Mengja shields Ichiya and furiously orders Wastenka's surrounding mutants to leave the chamber immediately. She then demands the truth, refusing to tolerate another vague excuse about his dangerous experiments. Wastenka asks her to speak privately, but she insists every explanation can be given here. He warns the matter affects all demonkind and directly concerns the survival of the demon mother. That revelation changes Mengjia's expression, and she reluctantly orders Ichiya to wait behind. Watching them disappear, he suspects his body's escalating changes may somehow connect to the demon mother. His growing muscles and spreading mutation make every secret surrounding Wastenka's medicine increasingly harder to untangle. Overwhelmed by unanswered questions, Ichiya pauses alone and tries to understand his accelerating transformation. Suddenly, Wastenka's warped subjects crawl from organic openings throughout the walls and surround their abandoned target. The grotesque mutants throw back their heads and release ravenous screams across the chamber. Ichiya recognizes the imminent attack as every altered creature fixes its glowing eyes upon him. Several massive specimens charge together, forcing the isolated prisoner to confront their crushing combined assault. Elsewhere, Wastenka explains Ichiya received an experimental drug after severe injuries and a tracker for observation. He reveals the demon mother received that same medicine, while Ichiya's condition now proves its effectiveness. Mingji protests her mother remains terribly weak, but Westenka blames the cautious dosage he administered. Ichia's horns and inhuman physique prove the drug works far beyond ordinary human biological limits. Westenka assures Mingji her mother may stop reproducing, yet can still remain safely alive. Overcome with relief, Mingji laughs through tears and gratefully embraces the promise of her mother's survival. Back in the ambush, Ichia dodges a giant mutant's fist and lets it smash another attacker. Landing beside the fallen creature, he demands to know whether any human consciousness remains inside. The raging brute answers with another enormous swing, forcing him beneath its crushing arm. Ichia shouts for a response, warning he will stop holding back if nobody answers. Two more hulking mutants charge simultaneously, attempting to trap him between their massive bodies. He drops low beneath the first sweeping arm and redirects its momentum toward its companion. Their bodies collide with bone-rattling force while the agile prisoner escapes through the opening. Even believing they might be saved, Ichia finally accepts that hesitation will only get him killed. His counterattack tears violently through a mutant's mouth, spraying blood across its monstrous face. Another creature climbs over its wounded companion, but Ichia laughs and welcomes the escalating battle. Smiling with transformed confidence, he challenges every remaining attacker to come forward together. Surrounded by writhing bodies, he spreads his arms and prepares to meet their next rush. A charging beast suddenly collapses behind him, revealing a deep bloody slash across its back. The enormous blade responsible rises from the wreckage as an unexpected transformed fighter enters. Chichu proudly displays his bladed arm, praises Ichia's transformation, and demands a duel. He immediately charges and swings, declaring that he will prove himself by defeating his former protector. Yet the dramatic assault ends with Chichu sprawled helplessly while Ichia stares in confusion. His stitched green face remains crushed against the ground, tears streaming after the humiliating failure. Mengji returns through the defeated mutants, confirms Ichia is unharmed, and orders him to leave. He demands answers about Westenka's alterations, but she promises to explain everything while traveling. Meanwhile, Chichu questions how an ordinary human could survive a heart meant to consume him. Westenka confirms the golden heart partially fused with Ichia, making its surgical removal impossible now. He plans to wait until complete consumption, then somehow recover the heart while keeping Ichia alive. Seeking answers about the stolen tracker, Westenka calls for his hidden observer named Gogo. Gogo emerges and reports Big Mouth stole the eternal stairbug after his followers attacked. Westenka finally understands the food area ambush and wonders what the giant general truly wants. He orders Gogo to secretly follow Ichia, protect him, and prevent his valuable heart from dying. After Gogo departs, Chichu asks why Big Mouth suddenly became interested in Ichia. Westenka connects the attack to Big Mouth's obsessive desire to eat power and become stronger. Elsewhere, Demon King Flame orders 50 heat-wielding demons assembled for tomorrow's assault on the snow region. Fire begs to remain behind, admitting his previous experience left him terrified of the cold. The ruler refuses to take him anyway, instead ordering Mungji summoned for the extermination campaign. Fire cautiously asks what should happen to the human constantly remaining beside Mungji. Demon King Flame answers without hesitation, declaring the troublesome prisoner must simply be killed. He assigns that execution to Leah, intending to test her true attitude towards humanity. To the ruler, every lowly human deserves nothing beyond enslavement beneath demon authority. Traveling with Ichia, Mungji explains her mother's condition worsens as every new birth becomes harder. Westenka's drug offers survival without reproduction, and Mungji feels grateful despite her mother's unheard wishes. She admits other demons may lack her feelings, but the demon mother means everything to her. Ichia gently identifies that devotion as love, assuring Mungji the feeling already lives within her. Taking her shadowy hand, Ichia claims their reproductive efforts could finally free Mother from endless suffering. He says Mungjae can blossom through their shared work, comparing that promised growth to their love. Entranced by his words, she leans closer and softly speaks his name with renewed affection. Their intimate moment abruptly ends when Fire swoops into the cavern and cheerfully interrupts them. Misreading their closeness, he jokes that Mungjae must be preparing to eat her human companion. She angrily dismisses his burning serpentine aura before he delivers an urgent summons from the ruler. Mengji immediately tells Ichia to accompany her, unwilling to abandon him while answering the command. Fire blocks them, warning that the demon lord's brutal hatred makes bringing any human dangerous. Mengji protests that Ichia is stronger and more valuable than the weak humans demons despise. Fire refuses responsibility, revealing he is no longer a general but merely Flaming Sky's guard. She teasingly guesses his latest demotion concerns another problem involving his unreliable flames. Fire tells her to meet Yanqing alone and promises to personally watch Ichia. Mengji reluctantly agrees, promising Ichia she will return soon and continue their interrupted intimacy. She flies away if the smiling former general remains behind with her visibly nervous companion. Fire praises Ichia for deceiving a demon general, but the prisoner feigns complete ignorance. Without warning, Fire hurls him down through the cavern toward the workers far below. Ichiya crashes hard and bitterly wonders why powerful demons keep throwing him everywhere. He recognizes the developing shelter site as nearby workers recognize their returning organizer and savior. The freed humans surround him with gratitude, celebrating progress and marveling at his demonic transformation. Their questions turn painful as they demand answers about mutated companions and one man's missing brother. The celebrating workers suddenly fall silent when a purple-haired survivor steps through their gathered ranks. Ichiya recognizes Campbell, shocked that the grim one-armed man somehow survived Westenka's brutal experiments. Seeing Campbell's missing hand, he asks why this prisoner avoided the transformation that consumed Koke. Campbell explains he removed something buried inside his arm, believing it triggered the demonic mutation. Ichiya asks for details, but Campbell refuses to share anything with someone he considers a murderer. Other survivors echo the accusation, wishing Ichiya had died during the catastrophic escape instead. Losing patience, he punches the loudest attacker aside and demands Campbell finish the explanation. Faced with transformed strength, the shaken survivor finally breaks down and answers through frightened tears. Westenka injected them repeatedly, but Campbell amputated his arm after finding a tiny implanted worm. The removed creature burst into pink fluid, leaving Ichiya desperate to understand his own condition. Before Campbell can respond, the surrounding workers panic and scatter from an unseen approaching threat. Ichiya turns toward the disturbance, confused by their terror and the sudden silence around him. Leah appears directly behind him, calmly claiming this is how she has chosen to kill him. Her impossible arrival freezes Ichiya as he recognizes the dangerous general standing within striking distance. Yet Leah smiles and admits she cannot bear to carry out such an execution. Elsewhere, Raging waits for an outbreak after Mengji visits Westenka, convinced his plan is finally ripening. Supporting an enormous boulder upside down, the ambitious guard believes his own ability must soon bloom. Ichiya abruptly awakens holding an axe inside an unfamiliar forest settlement filled with wooden houses. Nearby humans celebrate his awakening and call for someone named Young Chi to come. Seeing ordinary people everywhere, Ichiya concludes with disbelief that he has returned to Earth. Young Chi explains Ichiya arrived 3 days earlier and awakened faster than every other rescued captive. He welcomes Ichiya to Leah's private property, revealing the hidden refuge called Underground Earth.